Follow me?
Not guilty.
Fight in here. This is a
Shoot
war.
your way out, kid.
Why is the run gun?
Serious.
Hello friends and neighbors,
And hello Code Monkeys.
and welcome to another tandem review with myself, I Talk Stuff, BankGeek8408, and Jesse of CodedLockFilms. Today it should not really come as any surprise to you, we're going to talk about The Hunger Games.
How could we not, really?
Well, yeah, I mean, we really have to. Before we get started, I kind of want to talk about like where we're both coming from here, because we're both kind of coming from different perspectives. I'm coming from the perspective of someone who has read the books and greatly enjoyed them. I'm not really, I wouldn't say I'm part of the fandom necessarily, but I do enjoy the books and I do enjoy reading them. I don't really participate in any of the fan elements like, you know, like I might for the Harry Potter series. And Jesse, or...
Well, back when I first started hearing about the, the Hunger Games trilogy and how it was, this, kind of the next big popular book series, I started hearing about it right around the same time that I started hearing the movie news about it. And so what I decided was I was going to not read any of the books until I saw all the movies, because I wanted to get kind of the opposite perspective that most people are going to be getting when they're going to be seeing this movie. Suck on that, readitfirst.com.
And that is often my regret when I see a movie that's based on a book, is that I don't know what the perspective of people who have never encountered the book before is. Like, I know what I think of it based on my perception of what the story that I know is, but not necessarily what it might look like from an outsider's perspective, so to speak. Yeah. So basically, from the perspective of someone who had read the books, I thought that the Hunger Games movie was a really good adaptation of the book. I thought that it really did. I think that the fact that Suzanne Collins was working on it with them helped a great deal. But I think it did.
Did she really?
Yeah, she worked on it with them.
I did not know that part.
Yeah, but I felt like it really did still capture. I didn't necessarily feel like it was all that it maybe could have been, but I also understand that in order to maintain a PG-13 rating and make it kid appropriate, that sort of thing, there are certain things that they're going to need to not make maybe as grisly or as intense as they were in the book. So in general, I thought it was a pretty good adaptation.
And from my perspective, I thought that this movie was absolutely fantastic. Okay. I loved this movie. I think. I mean, there are minor complaints I have with them, but they're just kind of, cracks in the crust around a very well-formed planet. Yeah. And really, I think what I found most effective about this movie is how every single death in this movie is like a punch to the soul, and like they matter. And I'm trying to think, my favorite one that I thought was done extremely effectively was actually in the scene where Katniss cuts down the wasp nest. And the way it's done in the movie is that basically they're like what's the little girl's name? Rue. Okay. So she's kind of pointing out to Katniss like the wasps, and she's at this point Katniss is up the tree. For those of you who don't know the scene that I'm talking about, she's kind of been treed by these by a smaller group of kids who are hunting her specifically, and she starts cutting this tree branch down to have this this nest of genetically engineered wasps fall down on these kids so that she can get away. And at first they play it like sort of comedically and in sort of an entertainment manner, but then the minute that those wasps hit the ground, immediately just complete 180 shift in the mood of that scene. And it is dark, it is demented, it is messed up. And I thought that was really effective at kind of showing you how, if you have this detachment from what's going on, like the people in the upper class do, you could see how this would be entertaining, because that's what the movie makes you do. Like, it makes you think of it as comedy for a minute there, and then it just pulls the 180. So I think that scene is really indicative of how well the deaths and how well the violence is done in this movie.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I didn't really think of it in that way, but that is definitely one death in particular that I felt like was really well done. And I think you did hit on something, which is they do kind of play it up. They kind of play up the reality show aspect of it, because this is essentially a reality show to the people of the Capitol, watching these kids fight to the death, and you really get to see at various points throughout the movie just how desensitized they've become to it. Like these kids are like they're fanboying and fangirling over these kids who are about to go and die, and it doesn't even faze them anymore.
And I think that's one of the many ways in which this movie, I feel like with a lot of dystopian movies, they feel the need to kind of hit you over the head with the fact that this is a dystopia. But in this movie, they don't really do that. I mean, they just kind of rely on the setting and the attitudes of the characters to let that carry through, and I thought it was really effective.
And one thing that I noticed when I was watching it is the nation of Panem, or however you pronounce it. It is supposed to be the United States after everything is basically gone to shit, and then the Capitol rose up and all that sort of thing. Reading the book, you kind of forget that. You forget that this is our country and this is what has happened to our country. The movie, there are several aspects, like I think again the reality show aspect of it. And also just little things like the scenery that they show and the way that people act. Little things show you that this is our country. This is America. This is what we have become. And I think that is really effective too. And another thing that I like about the movie is that in the book, for those of you that don't know, the book is told entirely from Katniss's point of view. It's first person and it's in present tense, so it's entirely within Katniss's head. The movie allows the freedom. And it occurs to me now that I said basically the same thing about Twilight. But the movie allows you the freedom to get out of Katniss's head and look around at what else is happening, like what's going on behind the scenes. And I really like that we get to see that.
Yeah. And from a casting perspective, especially, I thought this movie was really great.
Oh yeah, really well cast.
I mean, obviously, I don't know how well they played the character from the book. But, for the I thought everyone played their part really well. The highlight for me was Woody Harrelson.
Oh, yeah.
He was ridiculously enjoyable in this movie. I loved Woody Harrelson. Yeah. He was absolutely fantastic. Just this person who has basically become so jaded about the realities of this world that the only way he knows how to respond anymore is with sarcasm and detachment.
Yeah, and that was definitely one of the highlights of the casting for me as well, both from that perspective and also from the perspective that I'm comparing him to the character of Haymitch from the book, and really just, incredibly well done. So, to kind of answer the question that you didn't ask, they also play the characters from the book really well as just characters in their own right.
And I think, as I said, there are some cracks in the crust. I think that the action tends to overuse shaky cam a little bit.
I agree.
And I think that I understand that shaky cam has its thematic appropriateness when you're trying to create a frantic sense of battle where you're not really sure what's going on. And it's kind of, there's sensory overload. Yeah. And I get that, and I get its thematic value, but it can get kind of abusive in this movie.
It can, and I would agree with that. And I honestly didn't have a problem with the shaky cam while they were in the arena. The place where it really bothered me was at the beginning of the film.
Yeah. It seemed kind of out of place.
Yeah, there wasn't really a place for it, and shaky cam kind of makes me feel dizzy and disoriented, which again, if it's appropriate for you to feel that way, it's fine. So I didn't mind it so much in the arena, and I actually think it was considerably less in the arena than it was at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, I found it really. I found a lot of the things that distracted me about this movie kind of tapered off towards the end. Yeah. Like the more I watched it, the less I noticed things. Like like you said, the shaky cam I thought was a lot more prevalent in the first part of the movie. Yeah. Where it wasn't necessarily so thematically appropriate. The outfits of the first district. I found really quite distracting at the very beginning of the movie, but I noticed it less and less as it went on. Yeah. So I didn't really have so much of a problem with it at that point. The one thing that I think was really unnecessary was at the very beginning of this movie there's a text crawl where it's like an excerpt from the book of whatever, I can't remember the name. And, and it gives just a little bit of exposition on what the Hunger Games are. But then later they show this movie, like this movie to the 12th district, you know, just like you know, like a March of War kind of movie to them that explains what the Hunger Games are anyway. So I didn't really understand what the point of that little text crawl was.
And I did like that movie that they showed. I thought that was really good because they mention it like several times in the book. They mention, oh yeah, this is the sort of thing that they always show us, and they mention it in that sort of way because of course Katniss has seen it since, you know, she was a kid.
Right.
But I like that we actually get to see it, and it does explain it really well. So
it's a really good method of getting the exposition out of the way.
Yeah. So the text at the beginning wasn't really necessary, but I mean, you basically forget about it once it's done. So.
And I think, you know, but with the exception of that, I think this movie does a really good job of showing you, you know, what the world is like and the world that they exist in, and you know, like just not you know, forcing exposition in your face, just kind of letting it happen organically, which I thought was, you know, a really good thing. Like I said, there was just that one exception at the beginning, but other than that, I thought the exposition in this movie was very well handled, and, you know, explaining the setting and the characters, you know, all very well established, very naturally.
And I'm glad to hear you say that, because that's one of the things that I was concerned watching it. It's like, I know they're not giving us a lot of exposition, but I'm hoping that it's not confusing to people who haven't read the book. So I'm glad to hear that you're saying that it was really effective.
No, I mean, you know, a lot of it, you know, you can, you know, it gives you just enough information that you can kind of infer the rest, like, you know, that, you know, like, you know, basically just on mentioning, you know, developing, you know, the 12th district and the 1st district, you know, really well. I was able to, you know, just kind of figure out, okay, so the way society works is there's, you know, it's kind of, you know, a pyramid, and, you know, the higher up you get, the nicer, and, you know, like the higher parts of the pyramid depend on the lower parts of the pyramid, and their lives have to be crappy so that their lives have to be awesome. So that their lives can be awesome. And basically, you know, and like I said, you know, they don't tell you that, but they don't need to.
No. Yeah. So. Well, I think we should probably get on to our ratings, our overall ratings of the film. So for me, coming from my perspective, on the worth meter, I believe I would give this a worth seeing multiple times. If you haven't seen this movie, I would definitely recommend it, regardless of whether you've read the book, regardless of whether you think it's, you know, any good or not. I'd recommend going to see the movie and kind of seeing what they do with the story, and then seeing it again.
And from my perspective, I would call this an ultimate recommendation. I thought this movie was absolutely fantastic. I really, really loved it.
All right. Well, great. That concludes our review. Be sure to let us know what you think of The Hunger Games yourself in the comments, if you will.
And we will see you next time.
All right. Take care.
Bye.